Bisi sat on the worn-out wooden bench in front of her small food stall, watching the stream of customers flock to Kemi's busy restaurant next door. The sound of laughter, clinking dishes, and the unmistakable aroma of Kemi's delicious meals filled the air, mocking Bisi's meager earnings. She sighed heavily, wiping the sweat off her brow as she stared at the few pots of food she had yet to sell. For years, Bisi had struggled to make her food business successful, but no matter what she did, Kemi's food always seemed to attract more people. It wasn't that Bisi's food tasted bad, her recipes were passed down from her grandmother, known for her cooking skills. But there was something about Kemi's dishes that made people come back for more. One fateful evening, as Bisi was packing up after another slow day, a man in a long flowing agbada approached her store. His face was partially hidden under a wide-brimmed hat, his eyes sharp and unsettling. Bisi could feel a strange aura around him, but she was too tired and desperate to care. "Good evening, madam," the man greeted in a deep voice. "I couldn't help but notice that your business seems to be struggling." Busy forced a smile, her face heavy with frustration. "Yes, sir, it's been tough." The man looked around, his eyes scanning the empty pots. "Perhaps I can help you." Curiosity piqued, Busy tilted her head. "Help me? How?" The man smiled, but there was something unsettling about it. He reached into his agbada and pulled out a small bottle filled with a thick green liquid. The bottle glimmered in the fading light as he held it out to her. "This," he said softly, "is a powerful potion. Add just one drop to your food and people will crave it like nothing else. Your neighbors wouldn't stand a chance." Busy hesitated, staring at the bottle. It seemed too good to be true. "What's the catch?" she said cautiously. The man's expression darkened slightly and he leaned closer. "The only rule is that never let a baby see you mixing the portion with your food. If a baby sees, everything you gain will be lost. You will become poorer than you are now." Busy felt a chill run down her spine. "A baby?" she repeated, confused. "Yes," the man said, his voice stern. "A baby, be careful or you will lose everything." Desperation clouded her judgment. Busy didn't have children and she rarely had babies around her store. What harm could it be to use a portion if it meant finally having success in her business? She took the bottle from the man, her fingers trembling slightly. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The man nodded once and turned to leave. "Remember," he said over his shadow, "a baby must never see you." As the man disappeared into the darkness, Busy clutched the little bottle tightly, her mind racing. Was this the solution she had been waiting for? Could this small portion finally be her way out of poverty? That night, Busy couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the bottle on her table, torn between fear and excitement. What if it worked? What if she could finally overshadow Kemi and become the most successful food vendor in Ibadan? By morning, Busy had made up her mind. She would try it just once. After all, what did she have to lose? Busy sat in her small, dimly lit kitchen, the flickering candle casting long shadows on the walls. The room smelled of spices, freshly cut vegetables, and something more potent, the vial of potion she held in her trembling hand. She had thought long and hard about this moment, ever since the mysterious doctor had given her the potion and whispered promises of wealth. Busy had been torn between her skepticism and her mounting desperation. Her food business had been declining steadily, and Kemi, her neighbor and fierce competitor, was thriving. Each day, Busy watched as Kemi's store brimmed with customers, while hers stood empty. Except for a few loyal customers, out of pity or habit still came. But the weight of poverty was becoming unbearable. Her children's school fees were due, and her landlord had started to threaten to evict her. With nowhere else to turn to, she was convinced to try the potion just this once. "This is madness," she muttered under her breath, staring at the small vial. The liquid inside shimmered a strange, unnatural green. But what choice do I have? Busy recalled the man's words clearly. A single drop is all it takes. Mix it into your food and watch as your fortunes changes. But be warned, what you gain will come at a price. Use it wisely. She had scoffed at her ominous warning then, but now, with her future hanging in the balance, she wasn't so sure. Taking a deep breath, she uncorked the vial. The liquid smelled faintly of herbs and something metallic, like old coins. She glanced around the kitchen to make sure no one was watching. Even though she was alone, her children were still asleep, and her husband had left for the city to find work weeks ago. With trembling hands, she held the vial over the pot of stew shimmering on the stove. Just one drop, she reminded herself, hesitating. Her conscience screamed at her to stop, but desperation was louder. She tipped the vial over ever so slightly, and a single drop of the strange green portion fell into the stew. The liquid disappeared instantly, swallowed by the rich red broth, and if it had never been there. Bessie quickly cocked the vial and stashed it in a hidden corner of her cupboard. Her heart pounded in her chest, and for a moment she considered throwing the entire pot of stew away. But then the image of her empty purse flashed before her eyes, and she steeled herself. There was no going back now. As the sun began to rise, she hurried to prepare her stall. Her mind raced with doubt, but there was a strange anticipation bubbling inside her. She wondered if it was hope or fear. By the time she reached the market, the air was thick with the familiar sense of vendors setting up, the clatters of pots, and the chatters of early month shoppers. Busy's store was humble, a small wooden table with a large pot of stew and a few bowls laid out. As she ladled the stew into the bowl, the aroma rushed through the air, thick and tantalizing. She glanced nervously at Kemi's store just a few steps away. Kemi was already busy chatting with a small crowd of customers as she fried akara, the sizzling sound echoing in the cool morning air. Busy's stomach churned. What if it didn't work? What if it was a cruel joke? She bit her lips and focused on serving the first few customers who wandered over to her store. A man who had been a regular, though irregular customer approached, sniffing the air. This smells different today, Busy said, peeping into the pot. His brow frowned. Did you change the recipe? Busy's heart skipped a bit, just a little. I added something special, she replied, forcing a smile. He snuggled and handed her a few naira in exchange for a steaming bowl of stew, and he walked away. She braced herself, half expecting him to spit it out or complain. But to her surprise, after the first bite, he stopped, stared at the food in wonder, and then began eating faster, as if he couldn't get enough. Within minutes, more customers started trickling in. They came one by one at first, done by the irresistible scent of her stew, but soon the thick trickle turned into a stream. People who had never given her store a second glance were now lining up, eager to buy from her. What's going on here? Busy muttered under her breath as she served bowls after bowls. She could barely keep up with the demand. Her hands moved on autopilot, landing stew, collecting money, and exchanging quick pleasantries. All the while, she kept glancing at Kemi's store. To her amazement, Kemi's once thriving crowd has dwindled to just a few, most of whom seemed distracted by the commotion at Busy's store. Kemi herself looked bewildered, casting suspicious glances at Busy, but there was nothing she could do. No one seemed interested in her food anymore. By the time the sun began to set, Busy's pot was nearly empty. She had sold more food in one day than she had ever in an entire week. Her hands were sore, her feet ached, but her heart raced with excitement. She hurriedly packed up her things, and as she did, she glanced at the money she had collected throughout the day. The stack of naira bills in her hands were more than she had ever seen. She counted it over and over, her eyes widening with disbelief. This can't be real, she whispered. It was almost too good to be true. That night, as she sat in her small kitchen, Busy spread the money out on the table. Her fingers trembled as she ran them over the crisp notes. For the first time in months, she didn't have to worry about how to feed her children or whether she could afford to pay the rent. She had more than enough. But as the initial thrill of success began to fade, a creeping unease settled in her chest. She remembered the doctor's word: what you gain will come at a price. Busy pushed the thought aside, telling herself that it was just her nerves getting the better of her. Surely there was no harm in using the potion just once. Still, as she laid in bed that night, the weight of the vial hidden in her cupboard seemed to grow heavily, pulling her thoughts into a dark, swirling cloud of uncertainty. What had she gotten herself into? And more importantly, how far was she willing to go to keep the fortune that had finally come her way? The bustling city streets of Iyana Oja Market were unusually quiet around Kemi's food stall. The once steady hum of orders and clicking cutlery had been replaced by an unsettling silence. Kemi sat on a wooden stool, wiping her sweat-streaked face with the hem of her apron, her eyes darting to Busy's store across the road. A long line of customers waited impatiently, their clatters carrying excitement about Busy's amala and ewedu that tasted like heaven. Kemi clenched her fists, her frustration mounting. For years, she had been the queen of the market, her food celebrated as the best in the area. Her customers would even joke that her eforiro had magical powers, but now the tables had turned. Madam Kemi, one of her former regulars, said hesitantly as he walked past her store. I dey sorry o, but Busy's food is sweet past this word. Kemi forced a smile, but her heart burned with anger. How could Busy, who had just struggled to keep her business afloat, suddenly become the talk of the market? It didn't make sense. Later that night, Kemi confided in her friend Ranti. Something is not right, Ranti, she said, pacing the small room. Busy's food is good, but not that good. It's like she put something in it to make people go mad for it. Ranty snuggled. You know market wahala, Kemi. Maybe she's just trying new recipes. Recipes don't steal customers overnight, Kemi snapped. Meanwhile, Busy was reeling in her success. Her store was now the busiest in the market, her profits trailing within days. Every evening, she would sneak into her tiny kitchen, pull out the bottle of brownish liquid the herbalist had given her, and mix a few drops in her pot of soup. People love me now, she whispered to herself one night, staring at the portion. They don't know what hit them. But as Busy celebrated, Kemi grew more desperate. She began offering discounts, giving away few portions, and even trying to bribe customers to return. None of it worked. Busy's food had cast a spell on everyone literally. One fateful afternoon, Kemi decided to confront Busy. She stormed into the market, her face set with determination. Busy, she called out loud enough for the market women to hear. Busy turned, feigning surprise. Ah, Sister Kemi, what's the matter? What have you done to my business? Kemi demanded. How did you suddenly become the favorite? The crowd grew silent, curious about the confrontation. Busy laughed, her voice sweet and mocking. Kemi, are you saying I shouldn't succeed? Maybe your food is no longer as sweet as you think. Kemi's face flushed with anger. Mark my words, Busy. Whatever you're doing in secret will come to light. The truth always does. As Kemi walked away, Busy's heart skipped a beat. For the first time, doubt crept into her mind. Could Kemi somehow uncover her secret? Back at her store, Kemi sat down defeated. The once bubbling market seemed to shrink around her. She didn't know how, but she vowed to expose whatever Busy was hiding. Unknowns to her, the truth was closer than she realized, and when it finally surfaced, it would shatter the fragile world Busy had built with her potion. Busy's shop bustled with activity as customers flocked in, eager to buy her irresistible delicious food. Her fame spread like wildfire, and so did her wealth. Busy could now afford the finest clothes and jewelry, and her house stood out as the grandest in the neighborhood. The herbal doctor, with his stooped fame and piercing gaze, arrived unannounced one late afternoon. His visit always unsettled Bisi, but today she masked her discomfort with a smile. She ushered him into her newly furnished sitting room. I see you're thriving, he said, his voice low and desperate. Yes, Baba, the business is doing well thanks to your help, Bisi replied, her tone brimming with pride. He leaned forward, his expression grave. Remember what I told you. No baby must see you mixing the portion. Bisi waved a dismissal hand. Baba, I am always careful. Nobody has ever suspected a thing. The Harvard doctor frowned, his eyes narrowing. Wealth can blind you, Bisi. Do not let your carelessness bring ruin. My warning is not without reason. She nodded quickly, wanting to end the conversation. I hear you, Baba. Thank you. Later that evening, as Bisi prepared to close her shop, a neighbor, Mama Tayo, came by with her little baby, Adebisi, strapped to her back. Bisi, abeg, I need one more plate of your jollof rice before you close, Mama Toyo said, laughing. Bisi, though tired, decided to oblige her. She stepped into the back room to mix another batch of the special portion into her pot of stew. In her hurry, she left the door ajar. Adebisi, curious and restless, wriggled free from her mother's back and toddled towards the open door. Mama Toyo called out, but the little girl had already peeked inside. The toddler's innocent giggle startled Bisi. She sprung around and saw the child pointing at her and the potion. Fear gripped her like icy hands. Mama Toyo rushed in and scooped up her daughter. Ah, sorry, Bisi. This girl no dey stay one place, she said apologetically, unaware of the tension in the room. Bisi forced a smile and muttered, It's nothing. But her heart raced. She couldn't shake the image of the child's wide, curious eyes. As she locked up for that night, Baba's warning echoed in her mind. But instead of fear, an arrogant defiance took hold. Nothing will happen. Who will believe a baby anyway? Unrest to her, the wheels of fate had already begun to turn. If you're interested in this story, please don't forget to get logged to my channel, Biageli Stories, so that you get the remaining part of this story. If this is your first time of stumbling into my story, you're highly welcome. For my returning subscribers, a big thank you. Don't forget to click on the